Alright, so I found a template that I've been modifying that I'm going to use the demo and provide to you because it looks similar to the wireframes that you've presented, and this is the wireframe for reference. Um, so I found that this template is the cleanest and easiest to use, as well as easiest to modify while not sacrificing the look and feel and the quality of the coding. And I think once I hand this off to you, and also after you watch this video, I think you'll be able to edit the necessary changes in the code to essentially do what you need to do with it, and you don't have to be a web developer. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I mean that it's similar is that, you know, based on the wireframe, you have an opening page with the logo, and the water drops. That's something else that you can do, but it's not necessary. So as you scroll down, this is an all-in-one page type of website. So similar to the wireframe, as you scroll down, there's different sections, but it's all contained in one page. The right-hand menu, even though it's not exposed, it is accessible via click, and it'll simulate similar to what you have in terms of the wireframes. As you click or as you scroll down, each of the sections will highlight. So we're in the portfolio section right now, and if I scroll down to services, the services section highlights. And of course we can go back or forward, so if I click on the about, it'll scroll automatically to that section. You can also even have it turn on, activated as you scroll down and see it, or you can also have it shut down and scroll. That gives the user the flexibility, or if you had animations going on, the person can close the menu to see the animation or just leave it open like this. So it does give you more flexibility versus what you have here. So as I can see, it's very similar. I also added a new section, and that's going to be down here when I see that there's illustrations. So I'm not sure if you're going to code everything as text like this. Perhaps it's just going to be one big image. So you do have that an option to just place an image in each section. So let me showcase what the customization involves. So let's, for example, let me try to see something that you wouldn't want. So I don't necessarily think you'll need this particular section. So let's get rid of it. So we'll get rid of the about section, and I'm going to show you how you can get rid of an entire section as well as add a new section. So we're going to delete the about section. So you want to have a code editor, and what I use is Atom, so ATOM, and that's a code editor, and it'll be similar to this. Actually, it is this, and it is free. So I have the code up. Here in the left hand side is essentially all the files of this particular website. The main folders you're going to really work on is the root folder, which is all of this. The file that you'll be essentially accessing is going to be index.html. Within CSS, I've created a new CSS file called custom, and this is where we will be making some customizations to the styles. And then there is going to be main CSS as well. There's some quick things I want to show you in terms of editing that. And other than that, it's really going to be just the index.html and the custom.css. The index.html contains the coding, the structure coding for this website, and because it's one page, you only need to really essentially edit one HTML file. And then for the styles, for any type of visual changes, it's going to be custom.css. So what we're going to do is, whenever there's any tweaks, we will be overriding the original CSS, which is in main, base, and fonts, as well as vendors. But we're going to override with custom. So anything that's in custom.css will overwrite the previous. So those are in terms of coding files that you typically will look at. Images, is going to be the file where you're going to be placing all your images in. So as you're working through the site and you're swapping images out, let's say you want to swap out this particular image, the Liberty image, you'll be essentially going into the images folder. So within here, these are all your images, as well as you can see it in Atom as well. So as an example of changing the Liberty file, how I would approach that is I would definitely start coding and developing Chrome. You're gonna right click and you're gonna go to Inspect, or Control-Shift-I if you're on Windows. And what that does is that it will give you this sort of window where you can start looking at the source code of the page and start highlighting different components in the visual layer, and it'll show you in the code where it's at. So, for example, I'm going to go ahead and right click on this Liberty file, and I see that it highlights down here that image is going to be located in this particular code section. I'm going to expand it and continue drilling down and then see if I can see the Liberty image. So it's not here, but if I look up or if I look down, eventually you'll find that there's an image file. So as you can see, the image is in images portfolio liberty.jpg. So let's go to there. So within images, portfolio, and then liberty. And what I advise you to do is when you're trying to swap out images, swap it out with an image with the same file name. That way you don't have to change the name of the coding, it will just work. You swap it out with the same file, so you'll have an image called liberty.jpg, and then you'll ensure it that the dimension's 800 by 1000. And if you have Windows, it's kind of easy to tell what the dimensions are, because you just go to details, what that dimensions are. So you right click and go to properties, or if you have a view window open, it'll be on the right hand side. So that's it for images. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's delete a entire section. So I think what we're talking about prior is that we were going to eliminate the about section. So what you want to do is you want to right click, you want to do an inspect, and then you want to highlight, you want to make sure that the entire section is highlighted as you scroll up and down this source code. So if I scroll a little bit up, I can see that, oh, sections, okay. Section ID equals about. So this entire section, if I highlight this entire section, I can delete that entire section within the code. And with Chrome, it's nice because you can experiment before you actually make code changes to see if that's what's going to actually happen. So if I highlight all of this and I press the delete button, it's all gone. So that section's entirely erased, and that's exactly what I want. So that works out. So let me refresh. Nothing actually happened until I make the coding changes. So we know that we gotta look for the section with the ID about. In addition, I've also gone through the code and made a lot of coding changes to make it easier to be edited. So let's go there. Let's talk about that right now. So within the head section, everything from the top all the way to the head section, you'll see on line 55, I have a comment saying "Do not edit above." So that's for your safety. So anything in above line 55, don't touch it. Those are heading changes that you don't need to touch. Now, as you scroll down, you can see that each section is going to be broken up with main comment tags, like line 94 and line 60. This designates that every piece of code in between those two comment sections belong to the intro section. So if I wanted to delete the intro section, I could just highlight all of this, save it, and the intro section won't exist anymore. So let's take a look. So let's go back and let's refresh the page. So let's see what the intro section is. So if I right click, I will find out that the intro section is basically this whole black section right here. Now, if I within Chrome, if I go ahead and click on delete, it does delete that section. So I can confirm that that is the section I want to delete. So if I go to Atom and I go and take this entire section and I delete it, and then I save, if I refresh, that section no longer exists. So that's how you would delete an entire section. But we want to delete the about. So that was just an example for the intro. Let me just uncomment that. And within the about section, let's go ahead and delete the about section. And we will go and save. So the about section is this section right here. So we're going to have that intro section, the block section back, because I reverted that. But this about section will disappear, and instead it'll be the main black intro, and then it's going to be resume. So now we have the black intro and then the resume. Once you delete a section, it's also important that you want to delete the section within the menu. So we need to next delete the about section within the menu. So the menu is, let's see, it is above the do not edit. So let me modify this. So I made a mistake. Let's do it that way. So anything above line 37 you shouldn't edit. Anything below you can't edit. And the only reason why I moved it up is because the menu section was in this section. So with that being said, let's go ahead and now we delete that. And if we refresh, we got the there, and then within the menus we don't have the about section anymore, and everything still works fine. So okay, good. So let's go ahead and let's create a new section so I can demonstrate that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this section right here, because I can see you adding more sections, but it's going to be typically just straight text. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and this in itself isn't exactly a section. I think this component here is part of something bigger. I think it's part of this entire portfolio section. So let's find out. So again, let's go ahead and right click. We'll go and inspect. And let's see. It is kind of part of the portfolio section. It's called the Cta section. I see that this section isn't part of it's not part of the menu. There's no way to get to it. So we're going to have to add a couple things. It's not a big deal. And let's kind of scroll up and down so we can grab the entire section. So let's see. So it should be this right here. So section, as I highlight, let me just try to highlight this. I want to make sure that it grabs everything from this gray area. So that looks good. So it is the section. So in the code, I should be looking for section ID equals CTA. So as I scroll down, it's nice because everything is already commented. So if I do a find, which I can do with Control F, I can search for CTA, and here it is, the CTA section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this entire section here. I think I made another mistake, so let me just add this for now. So, and then also let me just make a couple of notes for a second. Yeah, so so when you get it, the CTA section will have comments on 516, 516, and 540. Things might fluctuate a little bit with the line numbers, but you'll be able just to do something like this. So be able to easily copy this entire section because it will be common in code. And let's let me see where I want to put it. Let's say I want to put it in between the contact and this custom example image section. Okay, so if I right click on this and I kind of scroll up, alright, so I should put it right before this example image section where the section ID is. So let's go ahead and do that. Now I'll do a find so it's easier. Example section. What's it called again? Example image section. So example image section. Perfect. I think this is another mistake. Instead of calling it portfolio section, it should be called the example image section. Everything that's in gray is essentially comments, so it's not going to affect the code because it's just a comment. I'm just writing notes so that when I hand this off to you, everything's corrected. So I want to put in this new code in between contact and this example image section. So I'm going to put some spacing and I'm going to paste. So this is not going to call the CTA section. I'm going to call this the test section. This is our little test for now. So that's the test section. The section ID for this, let's call it test. And then anything that has CTA, let's just make it cleaner, and we'll just keep it CTA. The main thing is that the ID is something else that's not CTA, since that ID is already used for the real CTA. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's see what it looks like before we do any changes. Okay, good. So it did show up in between our little custom section right before that and right after the contact. And there's some modification we'll need to do in order to make it look nice. But before we do that, we want to make sure that it shows up in the menu in between contact and example custom image section. So let's go back to our code. It's all the way at the top. And in between the contact and example, we'll put a space. Let's just copy this line of code. Because we call this, see, the section IDs are important, because this way we can do test, and then if we write down test here and we save it and we refresh the page, now in our menus we actually have a test section, but I don't think it's gonna work. Let me see if it does work. Okay, perfect. So I guess it works because we did change the section ID to test. So let's reconfirm that, because I don't believe that was the case. So if I do test 5 and I go to our test section, and I do the ID of 5, let's double check to make sure that works. Go to portfolio, but then if I scroll down, okay, perfect. So the moral of the story essentially is that whatever ID you put here, that's the same ID you want to put within the menu, between the href tag. So same ID, and two IDs cannot be the same. They must be unique. That way the menu knows which one to scroll to. So, and then in between here, this is whatever you want to show up in the menu. So if I wanted to say test page, you know, that's what the user will see. So it doesn't have to be the same as the ID. So let's see. Did I not save? Let's just save. So test page. Now also remember, ID is case sensitive. I use all lowercase for my IDs, so that's something to be aware of. Alright, so let's make some changes to the test section. I should have called that test section instead of test page. Let's just quickly fix that, just for perfection's sake. Alright, test section. Alright, so let's take a look at what it looks like right now. Alright, so I don't like the fact that it's so squished up between the contact and the subtitle. Alright. Within custom.css, I have made some extra utility calls or utility classes that will accommodate the most frequent type of changes. So within utilities, you can see something called like spacing top, spacing bottom. I also have spacing top small, spacing bottom small. And what you do is that these classes, once you plug them into the class, they will essentially create spacing margins in between the sections of where the classes are essentially applied to. So as an example, so test 5 section. Okay, so if I type in, let's use spacing top, spacing top, and of course what you can do too is you can add your own special custom classes. So let's say if you knew CSS, right? So let's do for example test style, and let's say you want, I don't know, let's say you want the font size to be something really big, so let's say like 60 pixels, right? If you wanted that section to have that particular style, this particular type of style, you can then do then you can also add text size, and since it's really, let's do text size 60, and that will essentially make all the text sizes at 60. As I'm doing this, I think a better approach, instead of doing small, medium, small, and not small and regular, let's just do, you know, this for 25, and then, because I don't know if you're gonna always want, maybe you have your own custom styles, and it'd be easier for you just to copy and paste these and then adjust the different sizes. So as an example, let's say you wanted like something as like 100, right? It'd probably be easier just to do something like this. And then pop that into your code. So this one is going to be 50 for now. Alright, so spacing top. Let's go back to our page. We'll refresh. And now we have a little spacing in between this test section and the contact. Now let's add a couple more spacing down here. This time, let's, instead of doing the 25, oops, let's go back. Let's close this. We don't need to look at this anymore. This is 20, or this is 50. For down here, let's do 100. Just so it should be twice the size of this. Do we have 100? Good, we do. So we'll use the spacing bottom 100. Okay, that looks good. Perfect. So there's 100. There's 100 there. This one needs the top, so we can add that. Let me just double check something. Alright, so I did remove the about, so I have to add that back in eventually. Alright. Let's go ahead and fix this one. So this custom example, alright. So let's go back to our code. Let me just do this quickly. So this is the test section, so the section right afterwards. Oh, spacing top, because we made some modifications. So let's make this as, let's do 25. That should do it. Alright, 50 looks, I think 50 would be good. I'm trying to make it a lot easier for you, so I'm making some presetting type of presets already. Alright. Now, because this section is going to be text, we're going to essentially eliminate this box here, and then we're going to extend the width, because this is kind of really skinny. So the box you have two choices. First choice, let me go back. You can right click and you can try to identify where that is. So if I right click on it and I scroll up a little bit, I want to get not just that box, but I want to get the entire container. Let's see what we have. We're going to look for a div class action in our code. So that's this section here. So you got a couple of things. I'll show you all the different scenarios you can do. If by some reason you want to get rid of it from being displayed, but you want to keep the code around just in case you ever change your mind, or you want to keep it as reference, you can always put it in within the comments. So, you know, by doing this type of command, and you can see it being turned gray, that makes it into a comment. So it will exist in the source code, but it won't be shown when it's when it's visually shown to the user. So that's option one. Option two, obviously, you could just delete it, right? If you delete it, obviously it won't show up at all, and it won't show up in the code as well. That's if you don't really care about having any references, or you're not going to change your mind. Or I did create a utility class, and as you can see, there's center, there's hide. So let's go ahead and add in hide. Save that, and essentially it won't get shown in the page, but it's also not a comment as well. So that's just there. Those are just three options. It depends on what you're familiar with. I think the best approach to avoid any confusion is probably just to comment it out, just in case, because you're starting out. You may delete things that you think you never needed, but then you end up needing it anyway. So comment's probably the best approach to take. But for the sake of this demo, just to keep things clean, I'm going to go ahead and delete it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the text, and I'm going to paste in this lower ipsum text just for demo purposes. I'm going to paste it here. And I'm just going to do some minor coding. Adding paragraphs. Alright, so let's save and then refresh. Good. Alright, so we have our paragraph, and as you can see, it's just the column is way too skinny. And then for this is double check. This is going to be within H1, and then we're looking for H01. So in our code, H01. So it's this part right here. It's also a hyperlink, so we could just remove that as well. We don't need that. I'll just keep it that there just for testing purposes. And then I'm just going to copy some fake dummy data text. Okay, perfect. Alright, so let's look at extending this beyond the boundaries and make the width a little bit wider. So inspect element, and you want to make sure you're highlighting the entire section. Alright, so we're looking at, we either could modify the Cta-content, because that does look like it's grabbing the entire container, but let's grab its parent, because we can go one up, and that's a cleaner way of doing it. So we're going to be modifying this entire section here, and here's how I would approach doing it. So click on section, and it's highlighted. In the right hand side within Chrome, we can experiment to see, okay, what options do we have. So I'm looking for something called width. Let's see if we can find it. It might not be within the section. It might be within here. So it is within CTA content. So ideally, I would like to edit this and have the width be here, but it looks like the width is determined within the CTA content. How do I know? Because I see a max width here. So right now it's set to 640. If I bring it to 8, it gets larger. 9 gets even more larger than that. Let's do 1,000. Let's see where that goes. That's beginning to look good. Let me scroll up. Oh, we can go a little bit wider. Let's do 1,200. Alright, so 1,200 looks good. So the width, now that it's being extended, the text looks good. We'll have to go back and fix this, because this used to be centered. It's no longer centered anymore. And what we want to do is we want to override CTA-content to 1,200. But we don't want to do that exactly, because CTA-content is being used with our original content, which is, let's see, I think, oh, this section here, we want this to be skinny. See how it's like long now and it doesn't look good because it basically makes it into two lines. So we want to keep that there, but we want ours to be extended. So what we'll do is, instead of ours being called CTA content, ours is now going to be called test content. Or it's going to be CTA content, but we're also making a new class called test content. That way it still retains the original CTA content styles, but we're going to also create custom test content styles to be on top of it. So what I mean by that, so if I go to, if I create a new, right before utilities, I create a new style called test-content, and I do max width is 1200 pixels, and I save that. If I refresh, we have this extended, but so this particular section is both a CTA-content as well as a test content. So because test content comes after CTA content here, we know that the test content styles will override whatever is in CTA content, and the only style that's in test content is our max width 12,000 pixels. And you might be asking, what is in CTA content? Well, CTA content contains, let's see if I can find it on the right hand side here. Let's see if I could show it. Well, CTA content, all it has is just the max width, so not too many other styles, but it could have other styles as well. Like let's say it had like font color, or let's do let's do font size, and let's say it's let's make this really small as for demo purposes. So you can see here, CTA content font size is 6 pixels. Let's see why the first paragraph isn't. I guess it's by paragraph, so let's ignore that. We don't need to do that. But what I wanted to show you is that this is 1200 pixels because of the override of the test content. But above, where it doesn't have the test content, and it's just strictly a CTA content, it's still the 640. So that's how you would modify a particular section with a custom style. Or I did create a utility class, or I hope I did. Let's double check. No, I didn't create a utility class. I could. Let me create a utility class so that by the time you have this, you will all you have to do is essentially just pop this in. So I will create this called full width, and the full width will have a max size of 1200 pixels. So let's delete that. So we don't need test content. So when I hand this off to you, you'll have this accessible called full width. So any section that you want to have 1200 pixels, essentially full width, all you have to do is add that class in. So I delete the test content within the style sheet here. So this will essentially go back to the skinny column because there is nothing defined as a test column. So it's skinny. We don't want that. Let's go ahead and close this. What we'll do is we will apply this full width to this section here. So it's a CTA content that we also want to make full width. I think that makes more sense. Refresh, and there you go. So that utility class will be available to you. Alright, so now we want to have this center. That I did make a utility class. That is so first what we want to do is we want to identify what that is. I think that's H01. Alright, H01, and that's highlighting the entire block section there. So what we want to do is we'll go to our code. Within custom, I have a utility called center. So what we want to do is within that H01, right afterwards, we'll put in the center. Save that, and then refresh. It's now centered. So that's essentially how you would add a section. And we also went through how to create a custom class, as well as utilize some of the pre-built utility classes that are defined within custom.css. So any custom class that you create will be above this utility comment on line 15, and everything below will be utility classes. Now you can always expand on the utility classes. So let's say you wanted to create a new spacing type for, let's say, 75. You can always just create it ad hoc like this, 75, and then make sure within the source code these are 75. Or let's say I could have just done like something like width dash 100, but let's do this. With this one, let's do a similar structure down here. So let's say we do, I don't know, custom width. Let's do 900, and then we could do a max width 900 pixel. And that way, if you don't want full width and you want a custom width to, let's say, that section, we could do it. So instead of using full width, we'll do custom width 900 and save it, and it should be just a little bit skinnier, but not as skinny as before. There you go. That's not too bad. So that's an example. So that's how you would create a custom utility class and start using it. And then, any section that you want to be skinny like that. So let's say, let's go back and let's see what other section we want to make 900. Let's apply it to this. Let's see what happens. And this is the right click. This is the resume section. So within our code, we'll go to our resume section. I'm going to do a find resume, but that's the menu. Scroll down a little bit, resume section. Alright, so here, let me see where I should apply the class. Should I apply it on the section? Alright, so section highlights everything. And then we have this part right here. Alright, because I wanted to apply to the entire section, I'm going to do it on the section, on this type of, on this line essentially, so section ID, rather than this. If I put the class, custom width class here, it'll make this part skinnier, which I think is already skinny, so it's not going to do anything. But putting on the entire section will also apply to this section too, so I want to see what happens when I do that. So class, intro, space, custom width 900. Let's see what that does. What I'm expecting is this is going to be skinnier. It didn't work. Maybe it did work, but let's make this custom width 500. Let's change this. Let's do this as a 500. Alright, it didn't work, and I'm thinking it's because there's an override that I need to do in here. So let's see. Yeah. So if I highlight timeline content, I'm seeing that this block has a custom width because it's highlighting something that's larger. So let's see what's going on. Might be on timeline wrap. Let's go up a little bit more. Column 12. Width equals 100. What if we do width equals 50? Would it make it smaller? Ooh. Okay, we definitely don't want that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put it on a column 12 here within the resume header, because this is what's causing it to be a little bit bigger. So instead of putting the custom width here on the section intro, we want to put it on the resume header, or let's see where it was before. Resume hyphen timeline. Alright, so right here, so good. We'll make that 500 and see what happens. $900, $980, $500. Okay. I'm seeing why it's not working. Custom width 500. That's a width of 500. Sometimes if that's a max width, what we need to do is we want to set the width to be 500. Let's see if that works. So there you go. Let's see. Yeah, sometimes the width is either set by a max width or a width. So you try both. Default, do the max width. If the max width doesn't work, then do it on the width. So that's how I would set things up. Let's go ahead and just delete this, since that's just a demo. Let's do a save on that. We'll also go into our code and we'll delete the custom style here. Alright, so I think everything's back to normal. Let's just make sure. So this is the short column, but that's a little bit long. So let's, what happened there? Did I delete a style that was important? Let's see. Hold on, I'm seeing some issues here. Let's see. Let's double check something. Let's save that. Oops. Just want to make sure we're back to square one again. Okay, good. That's the full width. Test full width. And then the H1, we also want this to be center. Save that. Alright, perfect. Alright, so that's essentially going over adding and editing different sections. The next thing I wanted to go over, let's see. I guess the last thing I wanted to showcase, which I kind of already did in a way, but here's another example of how to hide something. In the top section, you have these social media icons. I don't think you'll be needing that. So again, you'll right click and you'll be looking for something called Intro Social, because that's highlighting the entire section. And from there, within your code, you can do a find, bring you to that section, and again, you could just either comment it out so that it's gray, which will essentially, take it out. You can also just delete the entire line, or you can add my utility class of hide, and that'll work as well. So let's keep that there. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to showcase is that if you don't like this particular color, the pink that it has, same thing with down here, these two pinks look like they're a different shade. In order to change this, as for demo purposes, I'm going to change this to orange. But in your case, what you want to do is you want to right click, and then the right hand side, you can see that the color for this is this color here. You can always just play around with it. So let's say you want this to be green. You'll know that that's the hex that you will have to essentially change everything to. So you can use this Chrome Dev tool to kind of play around to see what kind of color coordinate that you want. So let's say I like this purple, right? So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Well, actually, what I need to do is I need to locate what color this is. So we're looking for FF0077. What you need to do is that the easy way to do this, because this color is all over the place, it's like in these headers, and it's also going to be here, and it's also going to be here, and I think certain links will have that pink color as well. It's also here. It might be this section here. I'm trying to find a hyperlink, because I know that if you had a hyperlink, it may change colors to be pink. Oh, here's one. So it's here. So instead of writing custom code to override the colors in custom.css, it's easier just to do a find and replace in the core CSS of this particular code, FF0077, and change it to a color that you're trying to change to. So in order to do that, you want to run a find and replace on base, main, and vendor. Most likely it's going to be in main.css, so you're going to go ahead and change it and see if there's any other places that needs to happen. And what you'll do is you're going to do Control F for find, and we are going to copy FF0077, paste it here, and then what we'll do is let's do that purple color. So that purple color, let's do a darker purple. We'll copy this, and then we'll do a replace. So we're going to change that dark pink to this particular purple, dark purple, and then we're going to do a replace all. Alright, so once that's done, we'll save it, and we'll see, and then we'll refresh the page so we can see some purple. So I saw that Spring logo here, and then up here turn purple. The menus turn purple. The colors that are supposed to be highlighted purple, so that's good. Highlight over here is purple, good. Some purple over here. This is still red, but this has changed to purple. The only thing that's not purple is this here, but I don't think this is a different color, I think. Yeah, so this one's CC005F, which is not the same as FF0077, but it's the same, it's basically the same ordeal. You'll do a find and you'll do a replace on the color. So I'm going to go ahead and revert back, get back to that pink. Alright, so that's perfect. So hopefully this demonstrates a good beginning, but most likely everything you need to do in order to customize this template to do what you want it to do. It not only for adding sections and removing sections, but also visually you could change the colors. I already gave you some example sections that I think you will use. So you have something like this. You have a section where it's all text, as well as a section where you can have a title, but you can delete this part as well, but then just have just an image. I showcase how to add things to the menus, and because of how this is coded, I think it's very easy for you to add or edit or even delete menu items. Yes, and then the sections are all commented, so to allow it to be easy for you to essentially, let's say you don't want the stats section, you can just highlight the entire section between the lines of code and just delete everything, or you can just shift things up and down. You can always move the section before the CTA. You can do that as well, and then adjust the menus for it. And then any custom styles are in custom.css that's been set up for you. So essentially this is a good template and an easy enough to understand template for you to go in and make the changes that you need to do. So we'll discuss further on how to move forward, but that's essentially your demo for this particular change. Thanks. Bye.